just, the beef and pork exports alone out of the United States account for like $20 billion of annual sales. And that's according to the USDA.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. It's your hungry and happy host, Phil Bass, back for yet another week with a member within our global meat trade in part of the industry, Nicholas Walker. Nicholas, thanks for joining today.
Oh, Phil, well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, it's pretty exciting. I think this is the first time we've had somebody calling in all the way from Barbados, which is, I believe, a little island out in the Caribbean. Is that right?
It is indeed. It's
Yeah.
a small island in the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you joining. Nicholas, you have a perspective on the export market, export out of North America market, and I like how you've mentioned in previous discussions the global meat trade, because I usually say export market, but that's not what all of our listening audience is more related to, because they may be in different countries, and so maybe you can just set the stage a little bit about just how vast the global meat trade is.
Yeah, well, thank you. Just to give your listeners some context to the scale, the global meat protein trade is a $1.5 trillion a year business. And, protein itself is like water. Everyone needs it to subsist. So it's produced and it's processed and it's traded and it's consumed in every country across the planet. So it is a very large industry, and I'd like to say that to this day, the way that these proteins are sold and purchased it relies on analog means to do that, and also to fulfill the meat protein transactions. What I mean by that is getting meat moved from one part of the country to another, or across the country, or across international boundaries and around the planet. Um, one of these single transactions often involves coordinating, several counterparties, processes, including like the producer of meat, wholesalers, trucking companies, ocean companies, warehouses, buyers, retailers, to complete a complex transaction successfully through the supply chain. So it's a very complex process when you're trading this type of perishable.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, and the reason that you're on today is to kind of tell us a little bit more about how all of that coordination is done, because you have and especially with your unique take on it, because you have kind of a unique technology that I think the listeners should be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, listen, so due to the analog nature of this trade, coordinating these processes is sort of like playing a giant game of professional broken telephone, with many manual inputs required to create and disseminate documents, for example, or shipping instructions.
Yeah.
And a lot of that leads to errors. A simple example of that is an instruction to keep meat refrigerated at -18. And it's manually inputted at +18, simple error. But that meat will arrive to a final destination cooked, maybe literally.
Yeah.
Another example would be a shipping instruction that reads to deliver the meat to San Jose, California, only to have someone, input Costa Rica as the country of destination. It ends up in San Jose, Costa Rica, and then no one knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
And, things like this, Phil, happen like every day. According to, recent United Nations, FAO studies, 30% of what's produced is lost. And that's lost through the distribution channel between the producer and the processor, retailer of the meat protein. So it's this inefficiency of the current marketplace place in meat supply chain that is responsible for these losses, caused in part by the examples I just gave you.
Mhm.
You know, it should give your audience some pause and to thought and thinking, like this is like a massive amount of food loss.
Yeah.
And it's like it's recorded, and it's um you can think about, not only is it loss of food loss or meat protein loss, the energy to produce it, the productive land to produce it, water to produce it and used in the first place to produce what is lost. It's got a significant impact.
Well,
And
and the energy to transport, and so yeah, if it's a big difference if you go to San Jose, California versus San Jose, Costa Rica.
yeah, and the goods may sit on a dock, in a shipping dock,
Yeah.
waiting and waiting and waiting, and no one knows where it is.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be this way, Phil. And we've been in the global meat trading business in logistics for decades.
Mhm.
And in 2015, TradeCafe hired a bunch of smart ex-Google programmers and senior architects to look at and to digitalize every inefficient analog process of the meat supply chain, with a goal to create a fully digitalized clearinghouse for meat proteins.
Mhm.
So, we created some web and mobile apps available through the Google and App Stores, first and only to sort of serve the needs of this global protein industry. And
Mhm.
our objectives to this were not only to accelerate the volume of meat protein transactions by matching, producer and a processor or retailer needs instantaneously at good market prices, and to finance and fulfill all the transactions through the supply chain, like efficiently and transparently without any food loss. And I must tell you, um, and this has been qualified, to date, the TradeCafe platform has transacted and financed and fulfilled more than 200,000 transactions with a value of like $2.8 million or something like that across 45 countries without any loss.
Wow.
And it's without any loss that's really important. It's
Yeah.
because it happens every day, and it really sort of, the old cliche, what's good for business is also the cliche we use is what's good for business is also good for the environment.
Mhm.
The world's largest protein producers, meat protein producers and processors and retailers recognize the value that this is providing.
Mhm.
And it's good for businesses. Quite frankly, it's good for the environment.
Well, yeah, all of those things above are definitely, I mean, important areas to address. We definitely need to make sure that our impact on the environment is minimal, yet still fulfilling the needs of the protein for folks on the global in the global meat market. I'm glad that you mentioned, the how we can how this technology could help minimize food loss. Food loss is a really important thing that we need to be discussing these days. Even in the United States, in the domestic market, we have food that's just going to waste, and that's a sin, honestly. So if we can fix that easily enough, it seems, with digitizing some of the network that we're using, that's a big help. And you mentioned too, and it blows me away just how much the meat industry is still with actual pieces of paper that is
Oh,
dictating where things are going. And so I think it's definitely time. This is a timely technology. Let's say that. So
it is, and it's not complicated either. These are
yeah.
solutions that can be created. I mean, I mentioned before, transparency was mentioned before, and our technology provides not only transparency but certainty in the supply chain.
Hmm.
It's important, where it doesn't currently exist today. And I can share you, if you like, I could share a business case example with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Which around the logistics part of it. I mean, one of the world's largest meat processor was carrying like 8 weeks of raw material in the meat inventory, in their inventory, and its processing division in a certain part of the world. So the normal carry of inventory might be 2 weeks from the
Mm.
time you get it to the time you process it. In any case, when we asked why the long inventory carry, the answer was because the processor had no insight or certainty when these raw materials they purchase would arrive. So
No.
they might have been on a truck, or they may have been in this case, it was a ship.
Mhm.
And they, as the client, would have to call their suppliers and ask them where the goods were that they bought. And often than not, they would be told something like, I'll check and get back to you, which was often never. So this processor built their inventory in order not to have one of their processing plants idle with 1,000 people sitting around.
Yep.
It was, in essence, their insurance policy against lack of certainty and transparency.
Mhm.
So we said, look, that's like absolutely crazy. And the simple solution to it that we have already is we showed them that any purchase that made on through this platform provided them not only the transparency, but the certainty of delivery,
Mhm.
and but also that the cold chain integrity would be kept through the use of like real-time GPS positioning and cold chain monitoring. So the end result, for this particular group was certainty of delivery within a day. They could pre-clear through the goods through customs because the documents required to do so were provided in the same app. And this also led to reduction of demurrage charges at port, a reduction in inventory hold that freed up hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash flow because they didn't have to keep raw materials anymore,
Mhm.
reduction in electricity costs, storage costs, CO2 savings, and due to the in-transit cold chain monitoring, like they could just look at the app and they could say at any time whether the goods were kept through the supply chain as they're moving through the supply chain, that they're all kept at the same constant level of temperature. So
Mhm.
no loss of meat protein due to temperature fluctuations, and no products sitting on docks waiting, and happy clients at the end of the day.
Yeah. Our meat processors out there could, I'm sure, appreciate the tying up of capital. Like if you're having to build up an inventory to be that insurance policy, as you're saying, your money's not working for you. It's just sitting in a cooler. And so this could even free up your ability to go out and explore the market even more instead of having a whole bunch of money sitting in a cooler in the form of meat that you're not using.
Of course, or you could use it for marketing, you could use it for a whole lot of other, CapEx requirements. So,
Yeah.
and also just keeps the meat supply chain working rather than
Yeah.
sitting in inventory somewhere. It's moving through the supply chain, which is really something that we is one of the reasons we built this platform.
Sure.
Keep it moving.
Yeah. So the platform is called Trade Cafe, is that right?
It is called TradeCafe, and it's
Okay.
the apps are available on Google and Google Play and the Apple Store. And you know, producers and it was geared to producers and processors to be able to put an offer on the platform and expand geographic reach significantly, and be able to get the best idea of price, price discovery, price transparency.
Mhm.
And if you wanted to buy it, you could. If you want to buy it or bid on it, buyers bidding on it, they can, or confirm it. And it carries all the logistics capabilities as well post trade.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's sort of a one-stop shop, and we finance both qualified producers and processors.
So okay,
Uh,
so that leads me up to I have two questions for you. The first one might be a really quick and easy one.
yeah.
Is that it it's predominantly for the global meat trade. Would this be something that could be available for domestic use?
Yeah, I mean, we
Okay.
we already have domestic. We have fairly large domestic producers and processors in the United States using this. And we actually have a very significant reach in the Western Hemisphere. So domestic producers of, for example, pork in the United States use it to reach export markets in Mexico, Central America, South America. I think right now we have 45 countries that we have global reach to,
Mm.
that are using it. So yes, the domestic market uses it quite extensively.
That is so cool. And that's great news. So for the I mean we have folks listening all over the globe. Obviously that's how you contacted us, and you're in
Yeah.
Barbados. You heard about us through the what'd you call it, the BBC World Radio, which
We heard it on the BBC World Service. It's
how
incredible,
fun is
right?
that, guys?
And I mean,
MeatsPad's made it to the world. So
yeah, and we are an American company, and we
sure.
are a North American company, and I just happen to be in Barbados. I mean, the reach of, in these days, technology is a, significant, scales significant,
Yeah.
uh, value. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, and so here we are now bringing meat up, the actual transaction, the actual delivery of the meat products, kind of more into the 21st century, as you've mentioned. So I said I had two questions. My second one was more for our folks listening from other parts of the world. That I mean, you're gonna have a lot of paperwork, and I'm using air quotes, paperwork, right? Because you're
yeah.
digitizing this, but a lot of paperwork, background stuff, and then currency exchange.
Yep.
Does this software take care of that as well? Does it help manage all of that?
Well, okay, so we used to, I mean, before Trade Cafe for years, we were an analog trading company. We had tons of paper, a
Mm.
huge amount of paper.
Mountains of it,
Yeah,
yeah,
we don't have if you were to see our office, we have zero paper.
yeah,
We use zero paper. All of this stuff's in the cloud. It's secured, it's encrypted, the whole bit.
yeah,
The only original documentation that we carry are health certificates typically, and even those things are being digitalized now.
sure,
AES, the US Customs Service, it's all digitalized already. Um, for customers, how does the foreign exchange work? Well, for foreign exchange, when we offer when a producer puts an offer on the platform, it matches instantaneously. So let's say you're a producer of pork bellies in Chicago and you put an FOB price onto Trade Cafe, it matches every single pork belly buyer that is qualified to buy those pork bellies with the specification that they have across the planet. It will
wow,
deliver an offer with all of the cost of fulfillment, trucking, insurance, all of that, and payment terms to the buyer of those pork bellies, wherever they are on the planet,
mm,
instantaneously in the currency that they decided they wanted to use. In the case of most cases, it's all done in US dollars, but there
mhm,
are cases that will do Mexican pesos, for example, and it will provide an offer in Mexican pesos if that is what the customer wanted.
yeah,
And if they want that, it's just related to the price. It's like,
sure,
here's the price in Mexican pesos versus US dollars. So
yeah,
and they just decide, uh, whether they like the price, and if they do, they hit confirm. If they want to bid on it, they can bid on it. Um, yeah, and so that's sort of how it works.
yeah. Oh my gosh, how exciting! I mean, it
It's totally
it
cool.
yeah, it's something I definitely want to start taking a look and checking out. Just because I find the global meat trade exciting. And like I say, I in the past I've always just said export markets, but the global meat trade, it is fascinating, and how we can be connecting folks with high quality protein around the world, and matching the right items. Different cultures, different countries prefer certain things, and
Yeah,
and this
exactly.
allows for that.
And this sort of leads me to the next point. I mean, the US is, one of the largest producers of meat protein on the planet.
Mhm.
And so when we focused, our efforts have been focused in the Western Hemisphere. A lot of it is out, you know, it's US export markets that, we have a lot of participation on the platform with.
Mhm.
Um, and, you know, it is, it is a very important, the export markets are really important to the US and North American meat industry. I mean,
Yeah.
extremely important. I mean, to your listeners, I don't know if you've had this number put out before on any of your other podcasts, but I mean, it's just, the beef and pork exports alone out of the United States account for like $20 billion of annual sales.
Yeah.
And that's according to the USDA. But if you were to add poultry into that equation, it's another 5.5 billion a
Wow.
year. Um, and as you had mentioned, well, sort of what drives that. And, the various demands of the export markets are
Yeah.
easily supplied by the US meat suppliers. I mean,
Yeah.
cuts that are perceived as lower value in the United States domestic market are in higher demand in other countries where these products are preferred and have are significantly higher in value,
Yeah.
which in turn bring better returns to the US producers.
Exactly. I'd love it if so I want to transition a little bit more into kind of more that big picture of the global meat trade and maybe talk a little bit about expand more on what you just said. Certain items have
Yeah.
greater value elsewhere. We as domestic producers, processors, we need to realize that getting into the global meat trade brings an enormous amount of value back to the United States. And what I like to remind a lot of our folks is that it also helps keep our prices, the prices of the items we do prefer at a more reasonable cost.
Absolutely. Like, absolutely. So to give you an example, not too long ago, maybe a decade ago or so, I mean, you think about all the offals that are produced an animal,
Mm,
pig, pork, or beef. A lot of those offals would end up in pet food in the United States, perhaps in pet food man. And this is very good. This is good quality product. All of it is great product, but the domestic market said, we prefer to have, ground beef for hamburgers, or we prefer to have, a steak on the barbecue, or we like to
yeah,
have bacon, or whatever. But, they had to, when they sacrifice the animals, they have to consider everything in that phrase. So
everything. Yep.
to your point, people started looking outside. Well, for example, in Mexico,
Yeah.
what are the maybe preferred sort of things there outside of even a lot of the consumers there buy high quality beef, but some of the market, it's a big marketplace, and a lot of, there's traditional meals that are made with, whether it's beef livers or beef tripe
Yeah.
or inside skirts or things that are of really high volume, very high quality, but are of significantly more value in the Mexican market than they are in the United States.
Yeah.
That's just one example. I mean, there's lots of them.
Yeah.
And
Tongue in Southeast Asia. I know. I
yeah,
just gave a I give a I like to give a little talk about byproducts in my meat science class and the difference in tongue here domestically versus in Southeast Asia. I think it's about a threefold amount if we can put it on a boat and get it across the Pacific. So
yeah, and it might even be worth as much as tenderloin.
sure. Yep.
I mean, in those markets,
Yep.
maybe,
Yep. But
yeah,
finding the right customer, right? And the customer's out there, and what this is doing is allowing us to be able to reach those customers in a more efficient and effective manner. So,
yeah, that's correct.
yeah. Well, and a lot of this to connects back to a partner of ours and a partner that I've worked with for a number of years, the U.S. Meat Export Federation, which you're a member of. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'll
Okay.
tell you, we've been a member of the U.S. Meat Export Federation for 20 years, and
Wow.
um, they are, if there's anyone involved in the meat industry, they should be, whether they're exporting or not, they should be a member of this organization. I'm not pitching it because I have any, we pay for our membership, and
Right.
but I can tell you, the organization is comprised of like really highly talented and professional folks who,
Yeah.
many of them have been in the industry for their entire lives. Um, they're committed to marketing and the growth of the U.S. meat industry, in particular the marketing of proteins to the international marketplace. Um, and the reason why we see them as a valued partner of ours is, they've got boots on the ground in most major markets,
Hmm.
which allows them to sort of access rapidly changing environments, which is sort of endemic to this business, and to deal quickly with, access issues if they happen, and when they happen.
Yeah,
And
I've been at the table at times when just eating lunch with folks who work for USMEF, and there may have been some type of market hiccup on the other side of the world, and they just quickly say, "Excuse me, I gotta go. Livers aren't selling in X country right now," and
Yeah, that's
that
right.
can't happen, right? So
Yeah, it's like Superman. It's like Superman.
they
We're
really
out of
are.
here.
They really are,
Yeah,
and literally they do fly in
yeah,
because they have to.
yeah. And I mean, so they've been, and they work very well with industry pros like ourselves who also are, we've got a lot of stuff at risk on, either on the water or
Yep,
going whatever. So, we work very closely with them. They're very strong advocates of their members' interests.
yeah.
They always seek to add value to their members.
Yeah.
So, I
They're
just think, yeah, I just think they're really, anyone who's in that interested in exporting,
yeah.
that's a place to start for
Well,
sure.
and like you've already mentioned too, for those who aren't even in the export business, maybe you're too small. We have a lot of smaller processors out there. Just connecting with them and finding out ways of getting information from U.S. Meat Export Federation helps you better understand the greater market and maybe helps to understand what's happening in your small regional domestic market, right?
100,
It's
no,
all
but
connected.
100%
Yeah.
because yeah, 100% because the pricing is definitely connected.
Yep.
If you're a liver buyer in the domestic market, all of a sudden you see the prices shoot up, you
Yep.
might be saying, well, why are livers moving up in price and nothing else? And it
Yeah.
might be because the export market's driving those prices up.
Yep.
And so it's
Yep.
good that you know that stuff.
Absolutely. I have to give credit to one individual, especially Erin Borer, who she's one of the
Yeah.
more market analysts out there. And
Yeah.
you talk about boots on the ground, but then they also have folks who are they're number crunchers. These are folks that are just trying to understand why something is doing what it's doing and compiling enormous amounts of data and digesting it for us so that we could better understand truly what's happening because it's such a vast world that we're dealing with.
And making it and doing it quickly. I mean, um, I was gonna add something. It's just like, you know, there's a lot of competition in the world, a
Mhm.
lot of competition, and there's no, the meat industry is no exception.
Yeah.
And I think that every advantage has to be used to gain the edge.
Hmm.
And you just talked about data, for example, and data in our industry typically lags behind because it's so analog.
Hmm.
You're reading reports, generated, and this is across the globe. It's not in any specific market. It
Yeah.
is all analog, and a lot of this data that we get is, can be a couple months old, or it could be a month old, or whatever the custom how it's recorded.
Hmm.
And so, you know, marketing to the export markets and marketing even to the domestic markets, um, will be really, I mean, extremely important continue to stay competitive in
Yeah.
these export markets. And sales to these export markets continues, as I said, to be analog by means of sales teams and telephones. And that is very slow and it's very opaque.
Yeah.
So I would just say that, those companies like TradeCafe, if there are others out there who have invested in technology and have the skill sets, will be able to scale both the speed and the geographic reach of clients in these markets, whether domestic or even mostly international,
Hmm.
faster, more efficiently, and providing a better user experience than what exists currently. And these are the types of companies that are technology focused to execute what's being done currently by analog means and the processes that follow that and by analog means. They have to start investing in technology, because if they don't, the rest of the world will pass them by.
Yep. How do folks get connected with Trade Cafe?
Well, they can do a simple Google search. They can get it through USMEF. We're members of a number of trade organizations. They can Google it, tradecafe.com, or they can go to the Google store or Apple or Google Play or Apple Store, and they can search TradeCafe, the app, and they can register.
Okay, excellent. And then one more thing that we like to ask our interviewees is, if you're willing, share a little bit about your story. How'd you get into the meat business, and how'd you get to where you are
Oh,
now? How'd you get to
that
Barbados? Because that's not a Barbados accent.
no, it's not a Barbados accent, and but we do a fair amount of business in the region in the CARICOM area as well as South America. So it's a good spot as a good medium spot between North America and South America, where we do a lot of our operations. How to get into the meat business? I was supposed to go in the television business, and I worked in a summer as a summer intern at a large trading company, one of the largest in North America. And I started to get intrigued by all the complexities that went on in to get meat from a factory
Yeah.
on one end to a consumer at the other end, either a retailer or a processor. And so I kind of like grew into it, and then I started to become, I became the marketing director and the business development person for this company, and spent a lot of time on the road, understanding the needs of export markets, to what we talked about earlier, understanding cultural requirements or nuances that would say, we need beef feed, and we need, give me, plasma, give me whatever, we need it. And so that really intrigued me. And then I really started in around 2009 to look at, like, it is so inefficient, like, and there's so many mistakes that are caused by just human intervention in this whole professional uh, telephone game,
Yeah.
that it was like we needed to make a change, and we invested in that change, and we iterated on that technology a couple of times, and then we really went to town and got the ex Google guys to come on and program stuff for us, and it really is quite a viable technology.
Yeah.
So that's how, and then the Barbados thing, I just ended up here. I spent a lot of time on the road still, but it's, as I said, it's very close to the United States and very close to, South America and the CARICOM region.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. I think this is a really cool technology. I want to investigate a little bit more on my side. Um, but any other parting thoughts for the audience before we call it a day?
I think what you're doing is amazing. I think the meat industry is very little understood by the mainstream, and it's
Yeah.
very. I think I've looked at some of your previous podcasts, and if you don't know a lot about the industry, this is a really good source to to understand the industry, and you've got some very good people that you've been interviewing, and I really applaud this, and I hope it goes on for a long time.
Well, that's the plan. Definitely, Francisco and I, we're out and about, and just trying to make the world a better place for meat enthusiasts. And so, man, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate the technology that you're willing to share, and let's keep this discussion going. So,
Cool, Phil. Look
all right,
forward to it.
awesome. Well, thanks
All
a
right.
lot. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.